with Dan Balow. I think it is more exciting to be joining the MEI monthly webinar live. One big advantage of joining us live is you get to interact with the speaker by asking questions. Watching a recording will not have this privilege. So please be reminded to use the chat box on the lower left-hand corner of your screen for your questions and comments. The presentation today will be divided into two parts. We will entertain questions after part 1. Disputes. An article in the August 5th issue of Publishers Weekly opened with this statement. I quote, "Disputes between authors and publishers are not uncommon, especially when it comes to marketing and publicity efforts," unquote. The article went on to describe the news story where thriller author Steve Hamilton decided to pull out his latest book, The Second Life of Nick Mason, from his longtime publisher, St. Martin's Press, before the scheduled release in October. The reason? The author's perceived lack of marketing support from his publisher. Authors and publishers have expectations of each other on what kind of marketing effort should be done by the other. Things are not clear who is actually doing what. Many times this leads to tension, frustration, missed opportunities, and disappointments. Hopefully, in Christian publishing circles, the author pulling out a much anticipated book from his publisher at the last minute will not happen. So, our webinar today is such an important topic for discussion, and we are glad to have 33 registrations from different continents. Our speaker today is Dan Balow. I had the privilege of teaming up with Dan in a publisher training we did together in Ghana in 2013. Dan is currently the Director of Publishing Development and Literary Agent for the Steve Laube Agency. He is a 30-year veteran of the Christian publishing industry. Formerly, Dan was the Director of Marketing for Tyndale House Publishers, where he worked with authors such as Francine Rivers, James Dobson, Charles Colson, Jerry Jenkins, and Tim LaHaye, and many others. In recent years, he has worked as publisher for 2 audio publishing companies and consulted with ministries and publishers on their publishing programs. So let's welcome Mr. Dan Balow.
Thank you, Ramon. Today we're talking about a very important subject for publishers and authors together. Each part of the publishing process has some unique challenges, and one that I think is overlooked too often is the interaction between the publisher and the author when it comes to marketing. Publishing a book is always a process. It starts very early and takes many months, even years, and so it isn't something that happens very quickly. And so I think certainly there's plenty of time for the conversations to be held that are important to in this publisher and author marketing collaboration. So I think it's we're not talking about something that is only happens over a matter of hours or days, but almost months and years. And so I've discovered that something that when someone doesn't have this conversation about marketing collaboration, they've just completely let it slip their mind over a many months period of time. So I haven't viewed, there's not too many good excuses why this does not happen more often. The digital world of publishing and social media is even changed this even more. When I started in publishing, there was no social media. There were letters being written. Certainly radio and television was important, but print media, magazines, and things like that were very important to marketing. And most often the publisher had those relationships. Now, with social media, the author has direct connection with the people who are reading their books. And so combine that with online selling and also with ebooks, and all of a sudden we have a situation happen where it's almost beyond just a good thing. It's almost imperative that authors and publishers communicate about marketing. The basic purpose of marketing is to create a buzz. That's what we. I'm not sure if that communicates across all cultures, but we use talking about a buzz to reach readers with the task of both author and publisher. And so what we're going to try to determine today is how do you work together and who does what? What part of that process does each party play? And show some examples. The publisher needs to establish their marketing and publicity channels. Every publisher, assuming a publisher publishes a number of books, will have relationships with writers in magazines or various online, various websites or other publicity channels. They know book reviewers. They know influential people. They know all the different pieces of things that are important to them as a publisher. So they establish and maintain those channels. The author is important because they establish a good, what we call an author platform. And what an author platform is it's simply the author collecting people that follow them. This is why social media has become so important for publishers and authors, because it is almost the perfect medium for promoting books, because you're not talking to 20,000 people on a radio station hoping that 10 of them might be interested in a book. You're talking to specifically people who are interested in that particular author, and so it's a very efficient way of promoting and marketing a book. So the author needs to establish that author platform, which a quick definition of that is they need to assemble a group of people who like that author and would like to read more from that author. Now, how can authors and publishers connect what they're doing so they can create good results? Together, they accomplish more than they can separately. And so this equation is really what the definition of great collaboration is, and that is 1 + 1 = 3. So the total is greater than the parts. I'm sure we could make all sorts of spiritual applications to this as well, but this is what good collaboration will do, and that is to create something greater than the parts might be able to do separately. The publisher has resources and a wide perspective on the market. If you're a publisher, you know things that an individual author does not know. The publisher knows what works best for them, and based on their experience with other authors and projects, they're able to give advice to the author based on what has worked for them in the past. Authors don't have that as much. They know what might work well for them, or if they're a new author, they don't really know what works well yet. But the publisher needs to use that experience, and the author should be paying attention to them because they would have a much broader base of experience because of just all the different projects they've done. Now, the author has connections with people, though. They know people personally, and they also have their personal marketing platform that we've talked about. They've even an unpublished author should be out speaking to groups, or maybe they've written articles for magazines, or they've done various types of things. It's very important for them to be connecting with people on an ongoing basis. So we have the publisher with their contacts and their knowledge, and the author, which has their contacts and connections with people and what they're doing, and we need to find a way to bring all of these things together. Now, this is where the problems begin. Many authors assume that the publisher will do everything and they can wait to see the marketing plan. The publisher oftentimes, though, are expecting the author to do the marketing, so they might be waiting for the author to talk about what they're going to be doing. So you can see this, if this isn't addressed early, and you have a great potential for disappointment taking place when both sides are thinking the other is going to be doing something, and the other side assumes that that the others is. Ramon has used the acronym DNA, do not assume, as part of what he talks about, and so this is part of that. This is I think you could apply this to so many different cases of life where people do not communicate because they assume the other party knows something or is doing something, and if they could have just communicated a little bit, they would have eliminated a lot of problems. So more and more, though, the publishers are expecting the author to do most of the marketing, so they might be waiting around for the author. So you can see where this could cause problems. Now, while this seems obvious, and this is, I've seen this play out numerous times in my publishing career, it seems obvious that most publisher and author collaborations never happen because they never had the conversation. Each assumed the other would take the initiative. I think it's if you don't set aside time to talk about this specific thing and you expect to cover it over a long period of time, then no communication really occurred about that. If you didn't exchange ideas in an orderly fashion, then no one knows what they're supposed to do and the other know what they're supposed to do. So each assumed the other would take the initiative, and it didn't happen. And so again, you can see where the problems would happen here. The most important first step, so, is the effective publisher and author marketing collaboration is for them to communicate about it specifically early in the publishing process. Most cases, a publisher is looking, this is one of the elements that they will use to decide whether or not they're going to publish a book. So often the publisher is pushing the author, saying, well, how big is your website? How many people are on your Facebook page? How many people are you tweeting to? So it creates a very, you see the importance of this early on in the publishing process. And so that's maybe there's ways of doing this later on, but I feel like earlier the better to get everything out onto the table so that you can discuss it. So this is how to, we're going to go through some steps here, about 7 steps on how to have this marketing collaboration work. And so step number 1 is you need to meet, whether it's most likely by phone or in some place, Skype or whatever, meet to specifically discuss marketing collaboration. Do not make this part of a broader discussion where we're discussing your, your manuscript, or how does the publisher work, or this or that or the other. You need to talk. The topic of the meeting should be marketing collaboration, and you should not move on to step number 2 if you haven't had that conversation. So this seems fairly obvious, but don't give this a small effort. This should be something you should strongly address. So the agenda for that meeting is you need to list the author, things that the author is doing, all their different marketing elements, what websites they have, what speaking engagements they're doing, list all the things that the author can do. Then also list all the publisher things that they are going to be doing, and then you start connecting one to the other to make a specific plan to connect to each other. So it's this seems overly simplified, but if an author has a website and the publisher has a website, you need to exchange links to each other's websites. That's a very specific thing that needs to happen. And so you have, by keeping the agenda simple like this, it creates the potential for some very tangible, strong actions that can be done. For instance, I've mentioned this about the website. How will each of the websites relate? For instance, when a cover of a book is developed, make sure that the look of that cover is carried to the author website through the art and color. I have a client who has been published by a publisher here in the US, and the first thing that they did is they gave the, after they finished the cover of the book, is they gave the author some pieces of art and some other things that the author then put on their website. So all of a sudden the cover art for the book became part of the author website, and that's a very effective way to collaborate between the two. So things the authors have. The authors have a message platform. They have their, so this is the list of things that we have here for authors. The message platform that they have, this is who they are. They have a website, they have social media sites, they have relationships with influential people, they have a certain number of friends. You know, the publishers have websites and social media sites. They have relationships with influential people, and they have customers. These would be like bookstores or websites or online sources for their customers. And they also have experience with similar books. Not every book is so unique that it's never been even thought of before. If it's a book on parenting, the publisher has experience with parenting, and so they know things. So you can see with all of these pieces how we can begin to develop this grid. Step number 2 then is to develop a very specific plan of action with deadlines and specific people to do each one. So that's the step 2. If you haven't done step 1, you can't do step 2. But step 2 is develop this specific plan. Ramon came up with this very interesting grid here. So this is some of the actions here. The action might be to write a blog about the book. Who does it? The author. Let's say the author's name is Mario. What will they do? They will let readers know about new ways to combat their fears. Let's say that's the topic of the book. When will that happen? The blog will be ready for posting by July the 30th. The next thing, send out creatively designed bookmarks. The publisher will do that. What is that for? To announce and remind people of the title. That'll be done by August 1st. Radio guest appearances. Who does that? And so every single piece needs to have dates and times and deadlines on it so that you can be very, very specific. Anytime you make a plan that does not have a specific date or a deadline attached to it, then it will never be done. Just human nature will say, if it doesn't have a deadline to it, then there is no deadline. And so the chances of that actually ever happening are very, very small. So it's very important to make specific plans with specific days and times. Even needs to be done by 9 o'clock on August 15th, as you see here. Step number 3, the author asks the publisher if there's anything they can do to help. This is an open-ended question. This isn't an author telling the publisher what they're going to do. The author offering to the publisher if there's anything they can do to help. And most often the publisher will have some things. For instance, a book in your town, the author might be the best person to walk into the bookshop in the town where they live to get them to sell it. Or maybe there's a salesman for the publishing company that's going to be in town. They can meet with them. But the author should ask the publisher if there's anything they can do to help. The next step This is where Christian authors can be different, because this is people working together here. So this is not, there are some things that are universal truths, and then there's ways that Christian authors can be different, and this is where it starts taking place. Step number 4, the author can become an advocate for the publisher. They become a friend. They are, I call it making relationship deposits to that author. Most authors are so concerned about themselves that they don't think about developing this broader relationship with a publisher. And so if you are an author, or if you, then I always talk about, whenever I talk to authors, I recommend to them, if they want to have a great relationship with a publisher, they should offer to promote some of the other books that the publisher has been doing, and actually offer them up to their readers. They should minister to the publisher. If you are writing books on marriage, let's say, you should go and offer to give a free marriage talk in a chapel or something to the publisher, and maybe even offer to spend some time with some of the staff. So the ministering to the publisher. And then you should be praying for, an author should be praying for your publisher, and not just praying that they would do things the way you want them to do, but that they would seek wisdom and they would do the things that are important. So you can see this step number 4 begins the process that are very unique to Christian authors, that you wouldn't see this kind of thing happening in a broader general market publisher. The next step is that you make communication a priority between you. You plan regular communication. A note to authors: the publisher is doing more books than just yours. Take that into account on how much you expect. There are publishers who publish hundreds of books a year, and they cannot spend 1 day a week just talking to you about your plans. And so authors need to recognize that they that your book is not the only thing that they're doing, but make communication a priority between you. I think there's direct spiritual application to this as well, because of the openness that can happen between people. Anytime I've seen a problem happen or occur within any kind of a publishing environment, it is almost always a result when communication began to break down, and people were, again, assuming that things were going to happen. So make communication a priority. Step number 6 is stop doing things that are not working well. Change the plan if necessary. From a spiritual standpoint, plans are very important, but they're not stone tablets. They should be held lightly in your hand for both authors and publishers. There's good reason of that, because things change constantly. There's new opportunities that happen. That we don't just chisel that plan on stone tablets, and we keep it very fluid, and we do things and we communicate. But if something isn't working, stop doing it. Change the plan if necessary. And so this can't happen if both sides are very strong-willed and demand their rights or their way on things. So you can see how collaboration involves more than just a few things connecting. That there's an attitude of collaboration that must pervade this entire process. And then the final step is step 7, is you make a decision, both publishers and authors, to enjoy the process of collaboration and leave the results to God. The more this process becomes an exercise in getting the other to do something, the less it will work. I've been in situations over the years where an author has agreed to pray for the publisher, and the prayer was that the publisher would see things the way the author sees things. The more that happens, the less collaboration there will be. An open-handed approach to things what true collaboration is. And so I feel that Christian authors can be extremely can flourish under all of this because of the fact that our attitudes should be very humble and open-handed about what we're doing, and we're sharing ideas on a basis, and we don't mistrust people as much as maybe others might. So we've reached the halfway point, roughly, of our presentation this morning, and so this is questions. This is a time here for a midpoint for questions, and so I can field any of those. Ramon?
Thank you, Dan. Dan Runyon has a question. He said, all the marketing strategy of his publisher is to put his title in their catalog, in the publisher's catalog.
Right.
And he's asking, if I have to do all the marketing myself anyway, why not just put the book on Amazon myself, the print book via CreateSpace and the ebook via Kindle Direct Publishing? How would you respond to that question? So apparently there was no meeting.
Right. There was no meeting there. The Amazon and CreateSpace are missing about anywhere from 50 to 75% of the market. So the value of a publisher is that they can get your books in places that a publisher that is self-published cannot do. So you can do that as long as you're going to be doing the marketing anyway. But then your book is not going to be in various other retailers. Here in the U.S., there are multiple places to sell both physical books and ebooks. And so if you're only focusing on Amazon, you're missing a pretty broad section of the sales. So there's certainly there is value to what the traditional publisher is doing. Over time, however, if you find out that, for instance, if you have a ministry and consistently you are selling 90% of your books through the ministry, and only 10% elsewhere, then that is a candidate for self-publishing, because why would you continue to only take a small percentage of the revenue for something that you could do yourself? But I think an individual author, if you don't have that large other ministry channel, that you would actually lose a lot of opportunities to get your book out to a broader audience.
It's not too late to meet with your publisher and discuss really who's going to do what, and just iron out expectations. Right.
The best is to have that early, but do it early as possible. But it's never too late to start doing it right.
That's right. Joan Campbell is asking, how can you make this process of communication and collaboration work if your publisher and market is in a different country to you? So she is in South Africa and her publisher is in a different country. So how do you do that? Collaborating in between continents.
I think there is and I would take this on as a personal responsibility, is to learn something about where your book is being published and what is important there. Collaboration is not just two separate groups trying to bring their separate plans together. It is collaboration assumes that there is an interaction, there's an understanding between parties. And so I think more an author can learn about the publisher that's publishing them and the environment that they're publishing in is an important aspect of this. But from a communication standpoint, certainly there are between Skype and all the different types of things, you can be exchanging information easily. So it's not something that is done with international postal services or expensive phone calls. It can be done pretty easily. And sometimes it's done via email. Here's what I'm thinking of doing. Email your plans to the person. What are you guys doing? And so I think but I think the collaboration assumes that each party understands more than just a little bit about the other party. And so I think in your particular case, it would be a bad idea to sort of try to understand a little bit about what the publisher is doing, or what the author is doing in their market, and see where the collaboration can occur.
It's quite a challenge to be working.
It is.
In two different continents.
But not impossible. If there was ever a time in our history where this is possible, it is now with all the easy communication.
Yeah, with all Skype and Hangout and FaceTime.
Yep, I have a client in New Zealand, and we communicate all the time.
Okay, thanks. Deborah is asking, she's working for a publisher, and their difficulty has been making connections with bookstores and other influential channels. Mm-hmm. Any ideas on how to connect better with bookstores and influential channels?
Well, it depends on the country. What is it in the U.S. that Deborah, are you working in the U.S.? In the U.S.
Yes,
okay.
In the U.S. Yes.
There's all sorts of small, very affordable trade shows in the U.S. The Months Group, for instance, MUNCE, has these Christian product expos where it's very inexpensive for you to go, and compared to a large convention. And there will be bookstores there, and you can make connections. The other influential channels, like small publishers, have a very difficult time getting in to see places like Barnes and Noble, just because they are big corporation and they have difficulty. You might get 15 minutes from them. But other places for Christian books, certainly Amazon is easy to get to. Christian book distributors, christianbook.com is easy to get to. But I would maybe look up that Months Group. They offer their Christian product expos, and it's a fairly easy way to connect with bookstores.
Okay. Any more questions from our audience? Larry is typing.
We know you're typing. Oh, the Months Group. It's MUNCE. Months. The Monks Group. Yeah. Yeah. MUNCE. Like dunce, only with an M. MUNCE. That's right. There you go, Ramon. Thank you. Good group of people.
So maybe they have more questions towards the end, so we can continue with part 2.
Yeah. Just a little, in case you know this, Bob Muntz, who owns the Muntz, who started the Muntz Group, is the grandson of Grace Livingston Hill. In case people know who Grace Livingston Hill is, a famous writer from 100 years ago that did a lot in the U.S.
What time of the year does the Muntz Group meet, conference?
Pretty much, there's a number of them spread throughout the year. They would generally be in the spring, however, as people get ready for the fall. Fall is such a big selling season in the U.S. That would mean August, September, October. So most of them would be January through May, somewhere around in there. But they may be around. They've changed them around quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Should we move on?
Yes, let's move on.
All right. So there is very specific tactics, however, for all of this because we're now in a digital world. Not everything has gone to digital, but there is a certain percentage of what we've done that is different today than it ever has been. And so there are specific tactics for what our current environment is. So, for instance, we need to uh, we need to look at a couple of different things here. First, the things that you can control and this is the distinction we make with this new with the digital world. There are digital assets you can control, and that is your websites. You can control what's on your website, the publisher website, the author's website. You can also control social media to an extent, and I'll get into that later. You can control blogging. You can control your email lists, like you get a list of people that you can email to, and then you can text. Use the texting your content to people. So those are the things you can control. The things that you cannot control are consumer and outside websites or customer websites. So anything outside of there, you cannot control what they put on there. You cannot control social media from everyone else. You can't control blogs from critics and fans of things. You can't control emails that go out from critics and fans, and you can't control the texts from critics and fans. So knowing what you can control and what you can't control is part of the marketing collaboration here. A key element, it used to be where before Amazon, and where people could leave reviews online. Many times negative reviews were very shielded. Were not thrown out there for everybody to see. You saw good reviews; those were carried in various magazines and other places. But basically, bad reviews were kept quiet. Now that's not the case, and so a publisher and an author can do everything right, but you cannot control a website that decides your book is wrong, and I'm going to talk about it through social media and blogging and email, and I'm going to be texting people about this and we don't like your book. And so that is part of marketing these days. Publishers have found that as much of their marketing has become responding to other people's things than it is delivering their own marketing, because you can you may have this is what we say this book is about, but the fact is that other people may define that for you by criticizing it or saying that this is great. They may you want people to like your book, but critical reviews are very difficult to try to throw into this whole mix, but you can't really control that. So let's go back to the digital assets you can control. So these are things that the author and publisher can do. The publisher provides banners, or should provide banners, artwork, links, and other elements for author websites. Even if they don't just offer that up, the author should ask for it. The author, in reverse, should be giving a logo. If they have a ministry or something, they should give that logo, a photo of themselves. They should make sure that the publisher has links to their to various things on their websites, and any other elements that the publisher might need. A lot of publishers these days do ask for a list of things from their author. They ask them to fill out a certain questionnaire, or please send us the following things for our website. So they're very organized about it. But if this doesn't happen, then naturally, then you should actually push and make it happen. If from a publisher should send things to authors, and authors should send things to publishers, and just start that process. From a social media standpoint, each should follow the other. So for instance, a publisher should follow and like the social media from each author. That seems so unbelievably logical and simple, but it often does not happen. Someone doesn't have that checklist to do that. Also, the author should do the same for the publisher. They should be following and liking the publisher. Now, each should provide content for the other. For instance, there are key dates and events and moments for each, the author and the publisher. They each should be aware of that. If an author is going to be blogging about a very controversial subject on September the 5th, then they should know that they should let their publisher know that I'm going to be doing this thing on September 5, so that you know to and you're aware of that. Key dates, my 50th wedding anniversary is coming up, or my this happened or that happened. It's important. So you make sure that there's content based on key dates, and you're sharing that. And you each look for ways to support social media apart from the book promotion. So this is where the author can be an advocate for the publisher, that you can pick out another book that the publisher is doing and say, you know what, I've read this book and this is very, very good. And so you look for ways to support the social media apart from the book promotion only. On blogging, you mutually subscribe to one another. Make sure the publisher is getting the blog from the author, and if the publisher is blogging, that you should be subscribing to that. Authors should subscribe. So mutually subscribe and follow each other. The author blog editorial plan should be developed cooperatively. Whenever I talk to author groups, one thing I caution them about is that if you're going to be blogging, and same with a publisher, you need to have an editorial plan. You can't just decide the day that you have your blog ready to just start writing about something that's on your mind that day, because if you don't plan something and if you don't map it out a little bit, then you will be talking about your lunch that day, or I was, we had a fun evening last night looking up at the stars. So you have to have an editorial plan for blogging. Authors need to share that with publishers. Publishers need to be able to share what they're doing with authors about with related to blogs. Same with email. Develop a joint email approach. The author is the primary source of this. So the author is usually the one that's sending out their emails to their supporters on an ongoing basis, not the publisher, but they should be aware, the publisher should be aware of what the author is doing. I'm going to be sending out an email about my new book on Thursday, and they should be aware of that. So you have if you have a growing subscription base, the author might be able to support this. And I think this is another area where certainly authors and publishers can collaborate. Texting, this is used mainly for pushing links to a group of people, like Twitter, where you can say, hey, go, because you have such a limited space. But there should be a common strategy for texting and any kind of RSS feeds and other types of things with texting. So the direct connection of the author with their readers has changed everything in the marketing of books. This did not happen 30 years ago when I started in publishing. The publisher owned basically all the relationships involved in the process. Even when unless an author was fairly unique, most letters from readers actually went to the publisher, because that was the only address that was in the book that they could find. And so, but now the direct connection of the author with readers has really changed the whole core of what marketing of books is. So what I encourage people to do is whenever I talk to authors, I tell them they should be looking at various blogs and websites to sort of feed what they do. I look at their, certainly they should subscribe to something like Publishing Perspectives, which gives a broad global view of different issues that are being confronting in publishers around the world. And this is both religious and general market. There is a marketing guy here in the U.S. that actually travels all over the world. He's a very famous marketing guy that I find him just very compelling. Seth Godin is just very, very good. He was the one who started the whole process of the whole concept of viral marketing. And so how you tell one person about something and they tell two people and then they tell two people and it just grows as geometrically. And so Seth Godin is somebody to continually follow. And publishers should follow him, and as well as authors. Authors, there's a couple of blogs. Certainly our corporate blog for the agency that I work with at Steve Laube can be subscribed to. But another very, very good one for authors is Books and Such Agency. They have a blog, and all of their agents blog and talk about issues of importance to authors. And it's not a bad idea for even publishers to subscribe to some of these agency blogs, because it helps you understand this is what an agent is telling an author. These are how authors are thinking. And the whole concept of collaboration between publishers and authors begins with an understanding of what the other side is hearing and what they are understanding things to be. So it's so important for publishers to understand where authors are coming from and not view the entire world from just a publisher perspective, but from the author-publisher perspective. And similarly, an author should never view their entire world as something that it just begins and ends with the author and doesn't involve all these other people that are involved in publishing your book. So it's very important for all of that to take place. So we urge people to subscribe to these things, whether they're at publishers or not. So again, we're at a question and answer period. We can answer some questions here in the last 10 minutes, and then Ramon has some closing comments. And Ramon, do we have any other questions?
Yes. Dan Ranyan has a question here. He's being offered by Smith Publicity to market his books in major international book fairs for a fee. Is there any Christian organization that does the same thing for the Christian market internationally?
Yes. However, most would tend to work only with publishers and not with individual authors, but it depends on the situation. But a couple of them, Cindy Riggins, Riggins, Riggins Rights, represents a number of publishers, and they might also represent individual authors as well. They go to all the major international book fairs. Carl Dobrowolski, the company is Goodwill Management, and they also represent a number of publishers in the Christian market, and so I think that's those are two that would be very, very good at what they do. Three people typing now, 4 people. Cindy Riggins and Goodwill Management, right.
Okay, I see people typing for questions. Let's wait for them. James, hi James. James is in Indonesia. I used to work with many authors. Oh wait, I couldn't.
Scroll up.
I used to work with many authors, and many of them are not full-time authors. They also work as speakers and pastors.
Right.
And they always have tight schedule. How do we handle this kind of author? He's so busy.
Yeah,
And
actually, that's good
yeah.
that those people are busy, because that means they're out speaking to people and ministering to people, and so that makes for a very good author. Very few authors are full time, and so you end up a publisher does have to adjust their their schedules based on when the author is available, especially when they're out speaking, or certainly if they're the pastor of a church. So this is a challenge, but you end up meeting with them at different times of the day than you would if a person was working for a company or they were full time. So yeah, I don't really have anything specific to say about how to handle them, other than you may have to get together with them, uh, at their church or where they are, or make special allowances for that. But that is a challenge.
Hmm. It's a good problem.
Yes, it's a good problem to have.
Yes. Larry Brook, thoughts on finding an agent, especially for fiction?
First, I would probably just look for, depending on if it's a Christian, if you need a Christian agent or a general market agent. Uh, there are some online tools just by searching that, and then each agency has if you go to their website, they have very specific requirements as to what they're looking for, and so it's a bit of like hunting for something, because you have to search, and there isn't one easy answer to that, but there is a lot of online tools that will help you at least begin the process of researching it. But you can also go to writers conferences with fiction. There's the American Christian Fiction Writers Conference it's in Dallas this year, but there's about 600 people there, and a lot of agents are there, and you can meet with agents and talk with agents. But the ACFW conference is a good place for novelists to go.
Mhm. Um, yes. Oh, where are we?
Do authors? Let's see, Joan Campbell.
John Campbell. Do
Mhm.
authors have a responsibility to pull their books through a distribution channels? Isn't that the publisher's responsibility?
It's a joint thing. That's really what we're talking about here. Is this kind of collaboration will actually, once the books are in the various distribution channels, the marketing will be the thing that pulls the books through. And so that's the important question here, as to who is responsible for that. And I'm asserting in today's message that is a collaboration. So I encourage publishers
Collaboration.
to collaborate with authors and vice versa.
Mhm. And then Deborah is asking, what can a publisher do if the author doesn't cooperate with this collaboration? Sounds familiar. I've
Well,
encountered
it does,
such
and
authors.
the um, I think there really isn't much that you can do about it, except that you may not choose to publish that author again after you finish their book. It really is a relationship, and if it isn't working, there are publishers, though. I mean, I'll just say this: if an author sells extremely well, but just doesn't cooperate with things, the publisher might decide, well, we can still sell a lot even if we're not cooperating here. So but overall, you make that judgment. If the author is not holding up their side of the agreement by helping to promote and collaborate, then that should be an element of discussion if you decide to publish any additional books from that author.
Mhm. Okay. Yes, David, we will send you the link to the recording. Okay. Any more questions? Dan, you have a follow-up question?
I've been very pleased. Good questions today. Hope this was helpful.
Yes. Probably every author should have his own website to help in this collaboration. I don't have one yet. Any
Yeah.
advice?
What was the question again?
Well, he doesn't have a website yet.
Yeah.
So, any advice on how to create a website?
There are a lot of
Any
online
templates?
tools now that make it very easy to put up a nice website, and they're very inexpensive, and some of them are free. They charge you if you ask for more than what they offer for free. But I think every author should actually have their website, and there's a lot of online tools. If you just go to any kind of a search engine and just type in, easy websites. Another way to approach it is through Facebook. Um, I think you should have both, but Facebook actually has an author structure now that you can use, and so you set yourself up with using Facebook, and that's free. But you should have a website as well where people can where they don't have to be on Facebook in order to reach you. There's a lot of online
Barbara.
tools for that.
Yes. So Barbara is recommending michaelhyatt.com.
Yeah, he has a list of agents and other marketing things and other tools for authors.
WordPress is a very good. I've heard that it's easy to follow. They have very good templates.
Yep.
Very inexpensive. They can have free. If you want a little more features, then it's not expensive. So WordPress, yes, Dan.
Yeah.
Many people are using WordPress.
Yep. WordPress. A lot of great tools out there. You don't need to be spending. There was a time many years ago where you had to spend a lot of money to get a good website, but no longer.
Yes, thank you, Deborah. It's been helpful to you. Is there a benefit you have seen from using LinkedIn?
Different group of people. This LinkedIn would be where you would connect with a relative small number of people, but very specific. So that would be a good place to connect with other authors or other professionals that are in the same field that you are in. If you're in publishing, it's a good idea to have a LinkedIn site for that. But it's not, LinkedIn just really isn't set up to connect with tens of thousands of people like Facebook or Twitter or some of the other social media would be. So it's more of a professional level social media, but you should have one. So Ramon, you want to close? I think I don't hear Ramon. I'm hoping that everybody else is connecting here. But to close off the session today, we have some other information here that MAI trains. I'll be actually at the Lit World Conference in Singapore this fall, actually doing much of this same presentation. I'll be doing it in collaboration with a couple other people, though. And so that's coming up. If you haven't registered for Lit World yet, do that. MAI's next two free webinars would be on September the 16th on how to price your book, and on October 13th on how to engage readers with powerful infographics. That's very interesting. John Hurst, my friend from GMI, will be there. And Again, Lit World, Reaching Your Reader, the November 1st through 6th, 2015 in Singapore. If you haven't registered yet, Ramon says that there's a very large group. This might be one of the larger Lit Worlds they've ever done. So very, very excited about that. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we appreciate your attendance, and thank you for your great questions, and we appreciate your time, and I hope you have a great day.